Hey, it's nearly Christmas and that's super exciting because we're winding down now. Thank God for that, because I'm about to lose the plot, I reckon. It's been a massive year, and when I think back on what I've done this year, it's been a big one of the biggest ones yet. So I'm looking forward to signing off for a little while and heading overseas. We're heading to Finland for Christmas. My husband's from Finland. For a white Christmas up in the Arctic Circle. I don't know if anyone's been to Finland, but it's a good spot for Christmas, and everything's blanketed in snow by this time of the year. Take the kids to Santa Claus land, we'll have a ski and just get back to basics, which is enjoying each other's company, family life, and really feasting on, indulging, I would say, on way too much food and cider and saunas and all that kind of thing. A whole lot of nakedness as well in Finland, so it's exciting, it's liberating. But anyway, thanks for having me. Now, like a lot of people in this room, I'm juggling quite a lot of hats at the moment. As Andrew alluded to, I am retired now from the crazy stuff that I used to do as an aerial skier, and it's actually strange to think about this year winding up and knowing that in February, at the start of this year, I was at my 5th and final Olympics. And we will touch on, because Andrew told me to, touch on transition, because it is an important piece, especially for athletes. But anyone transitioning into a different phase of life, and that's the athlete moving on to world outside of sport, which is very regimented, very structured. What you put in, you tend to get out. There's no kind of fluff about it. But whether you're changing careers, you know, you're a stay-at-home mum that's decided to start her own business, or you're having a complete career change, sea change, or you're 65 and trying to transition out of something that you've been doing for a long time and something that you probably love and you find comfort in. So my transition story is quite different, I would say, that to most athletes, because I started planning it quite a long time ago. I would say I work in Olympiads, so every 4 years. I would say 2 Olympics ago, I started planning for retirement, only because I knew what a massive shift it is. Now I'm in a very extreme sport, and what I noticed over the years, and I had breaks out of sport. So I had breaks when I've been injured, forced breaks. I had breaks when I became a mum, so going through pregnancy, out of sport, living in the real world. And so I noticed a real shift in mood, in I guess the chemicals of hormones going through my body on a day-to-day basis. And I kind of like to explain it to athletes in this way, so that what they're feeling they can realise is actually quite normal. So as an aerial skier on a day-to-day basis, especially during a season, you're operating just at a different level, and same in your industries. I don't know, you're probably all from different industries, but I imagine some situations that have been quite high pressure and quite fast-paced, moving. You're making really big decisions on a daily basis, and you're probably making really important decisions on a daily basis. And for me, that was also the case as an athlete, because a lot of the decisions, I was risking my life. So I had to make split decisions and make sure I was making the right one, and making sure that I was managing that risk versus reward on a daily basis. And what I noticed was, after every season, after about 20 years now being on World Cup, I'd come home and it was common, I'd feel this lull, right? It's like when you finish a new project that you've been working your ass off for, excuse me, I've had a wine, and it finishes, you've completed it, and you have this kind of depression, right? And so what I figured out over the many years, that it wasn't a depression, it was just an adjustment. It was an adjustment back to how I like to call it baseline, because we're here, we're in baseline right now, we're sitting and having a couple of drinks in our normal day-to-day life. Out there, it's different. There's adrenaline, there's cortisol, there's a concoction of hormones flowing and chemicals, physiological changes going on in your body on a daily basis. So you start to operate up here. And you can't take drugs because I'm an athlete, and you get tested. And, it's not recommended that you drink either, doing something like that. So it's this natural high of concoctions and chemicals that you're feeling on a daily basis. And you do, a good stint of that for 9 to 10 months of the year, and then you finish a season, you come back, and you have to adjust. You're going from up here, you're operating at a high level where you're really on the ball, you're kind of in fight or flight mode on a daily basis, and then you come home and everything stops. You're taking the kids to school, you're packing lunches, you're cleaning toilets, you're doing day-to-day stuff, and you make that adjustment. And it's not a depression, but it's definitely going from here to a new operating level down here. And I realised that after every season, after every period of time that I had off sport and going through injury or going through, becoming a mother through pregnancy and childbirth, and it was quite real. And I'll get to the story on how I managed that and how I kind of incorporated other things in life so that I had balance in life, so that I could then prepare for that transition early, so that I knew that at any time that I was forced out of the sport through injury or I just didn't want to do it anymore, I had a backup plan, I had something to fall on, I had other passions in life that I could kind of attack with the same gusto, and the same level of energy that I was going to be okay. So today I'm here to share a little bit about my athlete life because, let's face it, I've been to 5 Winter Olympics, so you would like to think that I've learnt something about myself that's worth sharing over that period of time. I've enjoyed some extreme highs in sport and definitely some nasty blows, and I think failure and success have really shaped me and made me who I am today. And I don't think I would have learnt as much about myself if I hadn't experienced both. We all learn something from our failures. We don't always win, and they're valuable. They're valuable in terms of personal growth and lessons that we've learned. And I know that, my job description, being an aerial skier, is very different to the norm. But anyone operating at, and after that high performance, I think we share some similarities. I certainly know what it's like to put my body on the line and put my life on the line. I know what it's like to cope in a high pressure situation when you've got to make those really clear, snap decisions and really back yourself and really trust your skill and your preparation. I know certainly what it's like to have your confidence really shaken, and have to come back from that. And whether it's the GFC or an injury, it's the same kind of personal growth that you go through. And I also understand what it takes to succeed. I understand that you need a team. I understand the importance of really good communication, and I understand the importance of having a really clear vision. A really clear, crystal vision for yourself that you can bring that whole team on board to want to achieve. That's been really critical for me. So as I said, juggling a few hats at the moment. I'm a mum of 2 little boys, 7 and 3 years old. I run a company called Body Ice where we manufacture ice and heat packs for injuries. I mentor athletes. I'm really passionate at the moment about the mental training space, mental strength, developing workshops and sharing my knowledge in that area. I have a sneaky passion for property and development. My dad was in property all his life. He's a concreter by trade and more commercial buildings and things like that. But he's always said, Lydia, and ranted on and on about investing in property, and I do love it. We've just finished developing a place in Lawn, which is the second phase to it where we live. So that's really another thing really important to me. Lifestyle is essential, being happy where you live and where you work. So over the years managed to engineer, I guess, a mobile life where we're commuting between Finland and Australia, and being able to run businesses from basically wherever a Wi-Fi connection is has been really important. And then at some point in the near future, probably when my youngest, Alec, who's 3 now, will go to school, we'll move to Finland and develop some property there, which will be really exciting. Oh, I forgot. Brought some trinkets as well. Sharing a lot tonight. So...
Is that a door prize?
So, we've got an Olympic gold medal. I'll start over in this corner and you'll have to pass them down that way. And a bronze medal, which kind of looks gold, don't you think? So I shouldn't have said that, but it's both gold, really. Andrew, you can do the honours. So yeah, feel free to take a selfie and whatnot, but trust me, my knees are pretty good, so I can run pretty fast, and I will find you, most definitely. And finally, I've digressed a little bit, but I'm going to share some key takeouts, I suppose, from what I've learnt in my life as an athlete that really transferred nicely for me now into business and life. Haven't applied all of them, but working towards that. So it would be amazing, and I know this didn't happen for me, if we could just straight line it on that top line directly to the end point, our goal. And my path has been more like that one, which has been quite undulating and experiencing some real troughs, and eventually got to the end game, but that's not me. And what I really had, I suppose, as an athlete, and I always had a really strong vision of where I wanted to go. I knew what I wanted, and that was really important. What I didn't have was the plan and the strategy, which is equally important, and the team around me that really bought into that vision and could help me get there starting out. But I think if you want something enough, you'll really find a way to make it happen. I think if we want something enough, don't you agree? You just tend to find a way to make it happen. And that's kind of been the case with me. So I'll take you back to where it all began. That's a concrete bucket. I grew up in a fairly non-sporting family. Dad definitely put us on the tools at an early age. But grew up with 3 older brothers. Mum and Dad both migrated to Australia in the late 50s, I guess. Mum from Sicily and Dad from Cyprus. Fairly non-sporty, like neither of them were involved in any kind of structured sport. And no one really understood my obsession with sport, which started off in gymnastics. And I didn't really have any role models around me at the time. There wasn't any social media. Like right now we can kind of follow whoever we want and feel like we're part of their journey. Mine were just, ones that were plastered on my bedroom wall, and I could only imagine, talking to them or communicating with them or knowing what it would feel like to be them. And originally I thought I believed I was going to the Olympics as a gymnast. And I believed I was the next Nadia Comaneci. And long story short, it didn't really work out. There was a couple of things that happened, and I didn't make it as a gymnast. And I retired at the age of 17. That was my first retirement. And was left with a really good skill set. I knew that I wanted to continue in sport. I didn't know what sport, but I knew that I had a really good skill set to possibly transfer over to another sport. But in gymnastics, my time was over, and I missed the boat. And it was, it's an intense sport. And about the same time, about 6 months after I retired, the Olympic Winter Institute were looking for new recruits. They had this really out-of-the-box idea, actually, which is probably one of the only out-of-the-box ideas they've ever had of recruiting ex-gymnasts and having the idea of teaching them how to ski and become aerial skiers, as opposed to kind of getting, good skiers, which we don't have an abundance of in Australia, and teaching them the acrobatic side of things. So I get this call from the Olympic Wind Institute saying, Lydia, how would you like or are you interested in becoming an aerial skier? And I didn't know anything about winter sport. I'd never skied before. The closest thing I'd come to snow was, a hailstorm, I guess, in the backyard. And we were beachgoers. I mean, we holidayed down in Lorne, which is where I lived, probably because it's free and the snow is not. But that whole snow world to us was really, really foreign. And so I've gone into their office, which was at the Rialto Towers at the time, and they've set me down in front of this VHS, got the VHS tapes out and put me in front of this TV, and they've done the pitch, showing all these fantastic and amazing acrobatic moves, and this video reel, of course, didn't show any of the crashes. It just showed all these just spectacular jumps, and they're all nailing them, and it just looked effortless and easy, and I was impressed. I was impressed with what they were selling. To me, aerial skiing looked, like a sport that was certainly, it was exciting, it was spectacular, it was dynamic, it involved the acrobatics that I was good at. I'd been training that my whole life. It had that element of danger that appealed to me, and it was something that would take me around the world, which is something I hadn't done at that stage. And as a 17, 18-year-old, to be saying, they said to me, there's no facilities in Australia, so you're going to have to commit to a life overseas for 9 or 10 months of the year. So I'm like, get me out of here. And I didn't really ask any questions, because they only dangled the carrot and said, and you'll have a chance to go to a Winter Olympics. And I was like, yes, my second chance. They don't come around very often. My second chance to fulfil a childhood dream. So they kind of got me hook, line and sinker. And so I really I threw myself, literally, into this sport. And what they probably didn't elaborate on was this was a pilot program with zero structure. Zero. I'd come from gymnastics, which was regimented, disciplined, loads of structure. You basically show up and you just do what you're told. And I've gone into this program where they're like, show us what you got. And I did a lot of things wrong. I had this belief that now I've learned later is, we all have these beliefs that we grow up with, and some of them are limiting. Money doesn't grow on trees, and my dad was, you work hard, you'll be successful. You work hard, you'll be successful. And I worked hard. I really worked hard, and I was doing probably triple the amount of volume that anyone else in the world was doing. I overtrained. I jumped through niggles and injuries. This has got a mind of its own. It's not me. And I did a lot wrong. And I remember seeing aerial skiing live at Mount Buller. We used to have World Cups there back in the 90s and early 2000s. It'd be great if we could host them again, but it's just not happening at the moment. But that was my first time seeing aerial skiing live. And to see it live is something else. Standing underneath those jumps and seeing particularly the men do these incredible triple somersaults with multiple twists, and it just was mind-blowing. Mind-blowing. Here I am just learning how to ski, and I'm seeing this sport for the first time. And at the time, the gap between male and female aerial skiers was really huge, and I had a problem with it. I had a big problem with it because I couldn't understand why. So this sport, it's not really based on a certain strength or stature. It's all body weight to weight ratio. So whatever you can handle with your body, you can do. And there was, small guys, tall guys, fat guys, skinny guys, all doing these quad twisting triple somersaults. And the women at the time some were doing triples, but not to the same execution, not to the same level. And a lot of the women were doing just basic double somersaults with, single twists and not very impressive at all. So that gap was huge. And so from the start, I made it my mission to want to close that gap. And the men were the standard and benchmark that I set for myself, and they were they still are. They're my inspiration, not because they're men, but because they were the best. And I said, I'm going to jump like that one day. And so I was pretty ambitious because I couldn't ski yet. Maybe a little bit cocky and naive. But I suppose, and what I mentioned before, is I knew what I wanted, and that was really important. I could see myself doing that one day, and I knew what I wanted, and I knew that I wanted to be an Olympic champion, I wanted to break records, and I wanted to be the first woman to do this quad twisting triple somersault and close that gap and break through that glass ceiling that women, couldn't do it, or it wasn't possible. And do you know what was really annoying was that I met so much resistance when I started kind of boldly announcing my plans. I was a bit quiet about them afterwards, but they, the kickback that I got was more, well, you don't need to do these tricks to win, because the level was here, so you don't need to do them to win. Why don't you just do what you need to do to win? And I understand that from a results point of view, and putting runs on the board and investment from the government and other sponsors and things like that to just get the results. But for me, it didn't sit well. It didn't sit well at all, because I'm like, well, why can't I just do what I believe I can do? Why can't I just go for that? And there was a lot of resistance. But I had this vision to be the best female aerial skier that had ever lived, and that was clear. And that was clear as crystal for me. I didn't really have the strategy. I flew by the seat of my pants. I learnt that the hard way. But it was certainly that vision that kept me motivated for nearly 20 years of my career. It helped me see through injuries and setbacks and times where my confidence was rock bottom. And that vision made me work harder than my competitors. And it made me never set limits for myself. And that was really important. So I went to my first Winter Olympics in 2002, and that was 18 months after clicking on skis for the first time. And to get there in a short space of time meant I took some massive risks. I was a bit reckless, again overtraining, progressing way too fast through the difficulty of tricks before I was actually ready, progressing way too fast through fundamentals, which are critical, and was constantly injured, beaten up. I woke up every day feeling like a train wreck, and we didn't have any medical support. We didn't have anyone travelling with us, just a coach who let me burn myself to the ground, and there was no planning, no periodisation, there was really nothing. So they left me to my own devices, which was dangerous. But I was a really good competitor. So at those Olympics I ended up making the final. I ended up coming 8th place in my first year ever competing in the sport. No one even knew my name. They didn't even know who I was, but I was out there doing tricks that I had no business doing. And 2002, Elise Camplin ended up winning the gold medal. And so after those Olympics, I returned home and I ended up having to have surgery on my right shoulder. I had to have a reconstruction. I had a painful cyst in my spine that was growing, and that was causing numbness down my right leg, which took me a long time to actually rehab and get better. And I had a torn medial ligament in my left knee. So I was going for it, and I wasn't holding back. By the time the 2006 Winter Olympics kind of came about, I was already ranked number 2 in the world and had multiple World Cup wins, podium finishes, and those were the Olympics that I had big plans for. I was already doing these triple somersaults like the men, and they're the ones that I really thought I'm going to win those ones. And about 6 months before the games, I had this kind of freakish accident where I was training on the water ramps where we practice in the summer months. So we ski down an artificial surface, off these jumps into a swimming pool, and I'm doing the most basic manoeuvre, caught an edge, knees twisted 180 degrees up the jump, and I've ruptured my ACL about 6 months before the games. So it was absolute disaster, really bad timing, and really threw a spanner in the works. So I've flown home, had to have this kind of radical surgery, again a guinea pig, of this radical surgery where they used a cadaver graft instead of my own hamstring or quadriceps tendon, so that I could try and recover quickly and make it back for the Olympics. So I've had the surgery, I've done the rehab, I've worked my butt off to make it back, and I make it back in time. I did one World Cup before the Olympics and I won it. So I thought, okay, you're kind of back. You're back where you left off, back where everything's going to be okay. But in the semi-finals of those Olympics, one jump away from the final, I've re-ruptured that, same ligament in my knee. And my Olympics, were over for another 4 years. And it happens fast. It happens very quickly. 3 seconds, and it's done. All that work, all that kind of effort, that mental hurdle of trying to make it back, really shattered me. It left me disheartened, and only to go through again that really long process of reconstructing my knee so that I could make it back to peak performance. And so I flew home, and this time I took a year off that was my first forced break out of sport, out of the sport, and it was really important. Obviously had to go through the whole process of reconstructing my knee. The surgeon, had to take out the graft that had kind of snapped and the screws that had held it in place, and then they had to fill up the holes in my knee with bone from my hip, and then that had to heal up before he could then go in again and give me another reconstruction, and this time using my hamstring tissue, my own tissue. So it was a bit of a long road. There was four surgeries really, and it was definitely a low point in my career, and at that point a lot of people certainly wrote me off, back-to-back knee reconstructions. They kind of doubted whether I'd want to come back from that, whether I had the heart to come back from that, but at that point, even at those Olympics, miserable as I was, I knew I wanted to come back. I knew that I didn't want to let that injury end my career, and I knew I had a lot more to give, and that was really important. And that vision that I spoke about before, it seemed to be really blurry and way off in the distance now, but it was still there. It was still there, and that's what got me through that period of time and the endless surgeries and the knee rehab to get my knee better. And I love this quote because we've probably all been in situations like this where the chips are down and you just got to make the best out of a crappy situation. And often when one door closes, another one tends to open. And I had a year out of sport, but looking back, that year out of sport was the best thing that could have happened to me, and it really set me up for the rest of my life. It really started me thinking about, this transition piece, not as a negative thing, but as a backup plan. And I got busy, and I used my time away from sport to find balance in my life. I started planning a wedding. I knew the guy. It's all right. I'm still married to him. And it was also a really major point in my sporting career, and I was achieving success, but I knew that I could be so much better, and I was really sick of this up and down kind of cycle that I was going, and being injured and performing at about 30% of my capabilities. I knew I was better than that. I just didn't really know what I was doing wrong, and so the really important thing I did that year was surround myself with a team. For the first time in my career, I started handpicking my own team that could help me get through what I was going through, the trauma of what had happened, but also help me progress forward and project forward into the future Lydia that I wanted to be. So I got a new coach, a Swiss coach. So I separated myself from my existing team. Got a new coach that really bought into my vision, that wasn't about to say you don't need to do double somersaults, you don't need to do triple somersaults to win, so don't bother. But this guy was like, yes, he really bought in. He's like, you can do this. And so I started working with him. I got a new mental coach because I needed it. I was pretty messed up. I was traumatised and I couldn't figure out what I was doing wrong. So I needed someone to point out to me what I was doing wrong and how I could overcome it, and started working with a guy called Jeffrey Hodges out of Queensland, who was instrumental in pointing these things out to me. And I really transformed as an athlete. I really transformed as a person. Once someone breaks down your limiting beliefs and brings this awareness about yourself, you start to make some pretty significant changes. And we also got some medical support. I got a physiotherapist on board because I needed it. And we all made a plan on how I was going to achieve that next milestone goal of mine, which was to win the Olympics. To come back, but win the Olympics doing triple somersaults to the level of the men. Not just to come back and have a go, but to really fulfil my childhood dreams, and what I believed I could do. And my planning went from being quite careless to being very systematic and very strategic, to the point where every single day I knew exactly what I was doing. And that big overwhelming goal, it's like a big project that we have that when you start it just seems massive, but if you chunk it down into bite-sized pieces so that every single day you just got one thing to work on or a couple of things to focus on and simplified, that was mission critical for me. And guess what happened? Everything worked like clockwork. Everything leading up into the next Olympics happened exactly how we planned it to, and it worked, and everyone was on board. And as the games drew nearer, I felt like I was being drawn to this kind of future Lydia that I was visualising every single day, projecting forward rather than dwelling on what had happened in the past. Was a really, really big step for me. And another important thing that I did that year, and I got married and made some investments in my mind, which is really important, but I also developed my business Body Ice. And the story behind Body Ice just quickly was born out of the disaster of those Torino Olympics. So I'm sitting in the cafeteria, blown my knee out at the Olympics. I've got some friends around me, and I'm balancing this shopping bag of ice on my knee in between a couple of chairs, and it's leaking and it's slipping and it's falling all over the place. And by that time I'd had a gut full of ice in my knee, and I picked it up and I threw this stupid thing down, and I said, someone needs to make a decent bloody ice pack that doesn't leak and slip all over the place. And kind of at the same time I spat those words out, like bing, the light bulb goes off. I said, yes, I know I'm going to have some time off, so I'm going to do it because I need one. And so I flew home, and pretty much as on the plane trip home, I couldn't sleep because the nightmare of what had happened at those Olympics just was on repeat. So I got my sketchbook out, my journal, and started drawing the first concepts of what would become Body Ice, this ice and heat packs for injuries that were custom fit to any joint area that would not leak, and they'd stay cold and they'd stay in place. And certainly at this point in time, Body Ice, blowing my knee out twice in 6 months certainly was one of the best things that could have happened to me, because it's still a thriving and growing business that I've been able to manage from my laptop, and basically hobbled over to China. I was just off my crutches looking for manufacturers because there weren't any that could manufacture the product here. Sourced manufacturers, brought a container home, and within 6 months I was off and running. And I hobbled into my orthopaedic surgeon's office with one on. The ship had landed. I was going for it. I didn't have any idea of how I was going to sell the bloody product. But I walked into my surgeon's office and had one on my knee. He's like, "What is that?" I said, "Oh, it's my new product. It's Body Ice. It's my new business. And he's like, I'll order 500. And he has. Every 3 months for 10 years, and I found my target market straight away. I was going to target sports people and all this kind of thing that they don't want to pay for anything, but the surgeons, they pay. So it's kind of a really clear example of making the most out of a crappy situation. And obviously Body Ice has expanded. We're into different ranges, a woman range, a kids range, and now focusing on the mental training component of recovering from a setback and injury. So at the time I didn't really see starting a business as a risk, because I never had a job before. It was my first kind of job, and my job description at the time, I wasn't exactly risk averse, so it didn't seem like a big deal. I had nothing to lose, and that's kind of, I think, the best way to approach businesses, when you have a clear idea of what you want and you back yourself, you know it's going to work. You don't really know the how, but you know it's going to work. But I saw an opportunity rather than a risk, and saw something, a hole in the market and something that people needed, that I needed, and just wanted to fill that hole. And the driver wasn't to make money, it was just to help people, including myself, recover from injuries. So I went back to sport a year later with a growing, scalable business, and it was in profit, and that was the best kind of sponsor I could ask for. I've had sponsors coming in and going, but this has been consistent my whole athletic career, well, most of my athletic career, and I came back to sport with a different perspective. Like, I had balance in my life. I wasn't really this desperate athlete that had this kind of single track mind anymore, and I really believe that made me a more wholesome and rounded person. So I went to the Vancouver 2010 Olympics, mentally transformed. I was physically recovered and competing triple somersaults to the level of the men. And I'll never forget that night. You probably saw in the opening video that it was really foggy, and it was so much so that you couldn't even see the jumps from the top of the in-run. So you can imagine hitting a 4-metre jump and just waiting for it to appear, let alone in the Olympic final. But I felt so calm and so ready, and my progression to the lead up to those Olympics was, it felt like I couldn't put a foot wrong. And it was all the work that went into that planning and that strategy and the mental kind of components that I really worked on throughout the year to overcome and project forward. And all I remember thinking about was hitting that strong takeoff position on the jump, and the rest was that that autopilot kind of stuff that you're trained for and all ingrained. And I landed the 2 jumps that I needed to that night, and won an Olympic gold. And as I said before, each jump takes 3 seconds. So that night I fulfilled a childhood, lifetime, massive milestone goal in just 6 seconds. And everything I had gone through to that point, everything I'd endured, was worth it for just that one sweet moment. Something I hope I'll never forget. I've had a few concussions, but you never know. So after those Olympics, I became a mum. I had some time off. I thought, you win an Olympic gold medal, you feel really like you've succeeded. That's what success is. You'll feel that's the pinnacle, right? So I knew I wanted to become a mum and have some time off, work on my business. But I also knew I had some unfinished business in the sport, and knew that I wanted to come back. And a lot of people assumed when I became a mum that I'd gain like an injury, kind of drop off the radar, not have the heart to want to come back. But funny enough, I was determined as ever to want to come back, to want to come back as a mum, but also achieve another major milestone of mine, which was to do this quad twisting triple somersault. We call it the Big Daddy, just going because it's a big trick. And I couldn't really find a legitimate reason for why that wasn't possible. And my team had expanded. It was no longer just the sports psych, the physio, the coach. My husband, was right there, and had my mum and my mother-in-law that would come in and help me travel with me with Kai, who was just a baby. And so the team had expanded, but they all bought in and they believed and just in me and that vision to want to do that trick. So to just fast forward 4 years, cut a bit out, but I did fulfil that milestone at the 2014 Winter Olympics, and it was a slow build to that. And as those Olympics kind of drew nearer, I wanted to go and I wanted to defend. I wanted to come away with another Olympic gold medal, right? Who wouldn't? But as it came and it drew nearer, the idea of doing this quad twisting triple somersault started to become more important. I already had an Olympic gold medal, and I don't think it would have become more important if I hadn't already had that in the bag. But the idea of doing this trick was really important to me. And I'll never forget the night before the finals, because it was a 6-hour competition. You had to make it through all the elimination rounds to the final medal round of 4 people to have the opportunity to then jump for a medal. So it was going to be a long night. You couldn't make any mistakes. And the night before, I was sitting with my coach and saying, all right, well, if this happens, if I make it right to the medal round, what are we doing? Well, he asked me, what do you want to do? And I looked at him like, it's no brainer. And I want to go for it. And he's like, good. You haven't chickened out. And so that was really something I felt important about. Anyway, made it through all the elimination rounds to the final round of 4. And again, you make that decision. Do you go for ultimate risk and reward, which is just magical, or do you just go for what you know? Do you do the trick that you've done before that you know you can nail and secure another Olympic gold medal? So again, decision time, but made that decision pretty quickly. This was an opportunity to do something that I'd never done before. A lot of people say it was very risky, but for me it was an opportunity to do something that I believed I could do that was important to me, and fulfilled another important milestone that I had for myself, and something I would have regretted if I hadn't have done to this day, because you never know when you're going to get another opportunity in a sport like mine. You don't know. It can be over in an instant. So it was important for me to take that opportunity. I'd made it so far, I would have been cutting myself short if I hadn't tried. So I didn't nail that jump on my final jump. I missed the landing a little bit and came away with a bronze medal, which certainly felt like gold. And certainly thought after those Olympics that I would consider retirement. And I really tried. I tried to retire, and there's probably some people in this room that have really tried to retire, right? And then they go back to the office and doing things that they know and love to do and that they've known for a really long time. And so I had another baby, as you do. It's like Olympics, baby. And number 2, Alec, another boy. I'm like, right, I'm going to work on my business, and we moved down to Lorne. I started, building a house and developing some property down there, and got to like 2 years, and I'm like, I kept feeling this tug back to sport, and I didn't really know what it was, because I didn't really know my why. I didn't want to do a quad twisting triple somersault anymore. I always had a really strong why, but I knew that I'd missed the sport. I knew I missed the lifestyle of it. I missed being an athlete, and having that sense of that routine, the training, the constant refinement, that tinkering with technique, and I missed that. And as soon as I started jumping again, I thought I'll just entertain the idea, and if I like it, I'll keep going. And my husband, poor thing, just rolled his eyes, and there was some interesting dinner conversations, that's for sure. But I started jumping again, and this time, 2 kids, very young. And my why became pretty obvious as soon as I started jumping, because I started feeling these familiar feelings that I felt before, the adrenaline and the thrill of being airborne, the uncertain, that tiptoe between confidence and the uncertainty and things and feelings that I couldn't get in a normal daily routine. And so I started jumping and started competing again, and I found myself back on top of the podium and loved it. You know, when you're winning, it's even better. And the campaign for my final Olympics, which were just in February, became more about enjoying the life as an athlete, enjoying what great opportunity that was. Not necessarily to win anything. I was in good form, but not necessarily to do anything amazing. But it was also an opportunity for me to say goodbye to a sport and a routine and a lifestyle that I'd known, and people that I know from all over the world that I'd developed really good relationships with, and wean myself out of sport. That was my transition plan. And some people said, why would you bother if you don't want to do the hardest trick, and what if you mess up, and what if you fail and tarnish your record and things like that. But I didn't care about that. I missed being an athlete. I wanted to kind of transition the way I wanted to and appreciate, the opportunity it was, great opportunity it was to be an elite athlete and do something that I love doing. So the Olympics leading into the last ones in Pyeongchang, I was ranked number 3 in the world, so I was pretty highly ranked. So I was doing all right, and unfortunately fell really short at those Olympics and underperformed, and our whole team did, and it was devastating. Devastating to kind of finish on a low, knowing that I had the potential to do okay. But if there's any kind of silver lining in it, it made me appreciate some really good performances of my past. And those dusty medals that I was fairly nonchalant about before, that were they still do sit in my sock drawer, but I got home and I was like, wanted to open them up, and have a look at them and just appreciate how hard they are to win. But it's been an incredible ride. Being an athlete has given me a lot of purpose for a long time, a sense of self-worth, and it's taught me a lot about myself. It's been a very big self-development piece and challenged me in many ways, and often stripped me down to my core. And for that I know who I am, and what I'm capable of doing. And it's now, as I transition, and I'm very retired now, I've got no desire to go and fling myself and pour my carcass off a 4-metre tall jump anymore, and I feel really good with that decision. So I'm really happy with that decision, and just really applying now the skills that I learned as an athlete to my business. I'm not there yet, but it's definitely, for me, vision has really been key, and holding that vision, creating that strategic plan, and then you back yourself, you trust the process. I think that team is critical, and I'm still building my team in business. It's not 100% there, and I know it. But there's no way I would have achieved all I wanted in sport without that team. That really, were bought into that vision, and there's no way I could run a business remotely without a good solid team as well. And they're all experts, whether it's coaches or physios or whoever, who understand their roles and really buy in collectively to that vision so that you can move forward. I think compartmentalising has been essential. It's been really important, as an athlete, in juggling many hats, like I am now, like we all do, and it's just about choosing from on a daily basis where to put your focus, and to be able to focus emotionally and mentally on things that are going to help you succeed, and kind of just saying no to everything else. And I kind of like to see my life in little boxes. There's a mum, and when I'm being mum, I'm mum. I'm 100% there, and I'm the businesswoman, and I focus on that. And then when I was an athlete, I was 100% committed there. And we don't really live a one-dimensional life. So So all of these things are priorities. They're all important to us. So my coping mechanism is to compartmentalise, just do one thing at a time and take one step at a time. And I think never stop learning. Doesn't matter if we're 25, 16, 65, we can always find something new and evolve and refine ourselves and keep learning about ourselves. And this is certainly something that is endless for me, and there's always something to improve on. There's a better way of doing things, where you're systemising your business to make it more efficient, and refine things further as you scale and you grow. So for me, I'm enjoying retirement. I'm living a lifestyle down in Lorne where it's beautiful down there, and being able to run a business from there and have the freedom to travel and bring my kids up in that environment is really fulfilling, and really, really exciting. And I'm enjoying that transition out of sport. I'm enjoying helping other people do the same, and try and find their next why. As I am, I'm still refining that. It's not as clear as I was an athlete, but it's evolving. So thank you guys for your attendance. Thank you for listening.